Welcome back. In the last episode, we learned about the canvas, the UI, the main UI components, executions panel, and history. Now, we are going to learn about building your first mini workflow. We are going to learn step-by-step instructions on creating this workflow. It's a simple two-node workflow, but it will give you a lot of confidence on creating your first workflow and running it. And we're going to see what is the difference between the trigger and the action, which is the node. We're going to look at the data, and we're going to look at the output format of the data, and we're going to see how to do this. So for that, I would like to go to our trusty documentation, building a mini workflow. I'm going to show you. You can literally copy paste this file. If not, I'll leave the file that we create for download and we'll do it. So let's see how are we going to do this, right? Go to your n8n. This is where we were. You already have this. If you don't have this, it's very simple. Tab, trigger manually. This is the first trigger that you need. If you double click it, you come inside the node. There are parameters and there are settings. Each node has a different setting. However, these few settings will always be there for all of them, and parameters will differ based on what kind of node it is. So in this case, we are going to start the workflow when we hit the execute workflow. That's what it does. Execute workflow, it is successful, and this is the workflow, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add another node. Click plus sign or click plus over here. What we're going to look is hacker news. All right. So we're going to get many items over here. So hit this, get many items. You will get this dialog box. So first, I just want to show you how it looks like. Back to the canvas. You know why this was disconnected, because we did it from here. Now this is connected. Let's double click it. Let's go through the parameters. All right. Resource, do you want all the resources? You're looking for an article or a user. You have one operation, which is get many items. And what do you want? You want to return all, return how many? So the first thing which we are going to do is to an execute step. All right. If you see data over here and your node is executed successfully, it means that this was a success. You got your 10 items. So if you remove this, it was by default, it was like 100. If you put 100, you'll get 100 items. So what is this node actually doing? If you see Hacker News, this is basically calling this website. It's calling an API to get all or fetch all of this data using a GET request, and this is literally what we should see over there. How to verify that? Now we're going to do one more thing. As per the tutorial, we are going to look for automation. Let's click, and we need 10. We don't need a lot, just going to get 10. All right, so this is the data. If you see over here in the output, there is a schema, there is table, and there is a JSON. JSON is nothing but JavaScript object notation. We are going to work a lot in JSON in advanced topics, and you'll need to know JSON. I will give you basics of JSON after this chapter, but for now, just bear with me. You can see the outputs in 3 different ways. There are 10 items that were fetched, and this is the data that has been fetched. So if you just see, just to match, right, the value, this was like some kind of home assistant. And if I go over here and if I do automation, it's home automation. It's the same thing. It's calling this API. If you see do nothing scripting, the gradual automation or something, and if we go back, it's do nothing scripting, the gradual, the third should be something with n8n.io, the third is something with n8n.io. So it's exactly pulling in this data but the format is a little bit different because this is HTML and this is a JSON. But behind the scenes, this is how the data has been stored, and all this data has been fetched. So you can go through this data if you want, and you can make sense out of it. You can extract. Basically, you have read that website and you can do whatever you want to do. And that's the end of it. This is the JSON. JSON is nothing but key value pairs. This is a little complicated. I'll show you a simpler example, but this is how you can see the data. And that is your first mini workflow. Congratulations. That's your first workflow. Now you can rename this node to anything that you want. So I'm in the editor section. Let's rename this node. It's called as Hacker News. You can name it whatever you want. In the output section, you can see, if you hover over here in the eye, you can see execute successfully. The start time is 15th August and the time that it started, and it took 386 milliseconds to execute this entire workflow. So this is where you compare how much time it takes, how to optimize your workflow, and that's something which we'll see in the future. Before we go from here, settings, as I said, this has different parameters to always output data even if there was nothing run. Execute only once. Sometimes you get a lot of data over there, so you can execute once rather than each and every item. And if it fails for some reason, you can keep retrying it like several times. This is an advanced concept of having some kind of error. Error? Retry on error. How many times you want to retry? We're not going to do that. On error, what do you want to do? And the notes, this is just for yourself. This is my hacker node. Display node in the flow. It will show it in the flow, but we don't need that. And that's it. If you want to see the documentation of this hacker news, you can click over here and it can take you the official documentation. You can read about it. Come out. I want to show you something else, the executions. If you see the executions, this is what was run. If you don't remember, you have to press space and then you can drag this wherever you want. We are in the execution section. If you click, it will show you exactly what was the data set. We requested a node. Over here, if you click on the right, it will go to the next node. Over here, left of the screen, if you click, it will go to the previous node. That's an easy way to navigate rather than going back to the canvas and then, clicking whatever you want. You can just navigate from here. With that said, once we go inside, it will show you what was executed, what data was there. You can even copy this data and, do some research in ChatGPT if you want. However, these are all the executions, and by default, they are when they were run. So our last execution was at this time. This is the same execution which I showed to you in the information, in the node, in the editor section. And evaluations is, we are not going to do evaluation. It's a little bit of advanced topics. So we are not going to do that. However, save. So, and you can run this workflow as many times as you want. And it will, based on what happens on the website, if this changes, the output over here will also change. One more thing. If there is an issue with your node, so for example, we did not give an article ID over here, and I try to run, if you see, there will be a red cross. It clearly says that parameter article ID is required. Now, if I save it, I run it, it's not going to work. And if you will see, there is a problem running workflow. When you see this, it means that you have missed something somewhere. All right. So you can see that in the executions as well. In the executions, it will show you that it is errored out. And you can also debug the same thing in the editor. But we are not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go back and put this back the way it was to 10. So now this is a good way to show. So let's assume that I have already saved this, right? And I made a mistake. Now, It could be hours that you have spent creating one of the workflows in the future, and you have made some mistake and you want to go to the previous version. This is where the version history comes into picture. Now, if you see over here in the versioning, get an article, this is where it failed. I'm going to cross this out. But if you see this workflow, this has exactly what we wanted, which we had in the previous version. What I can do is in the actions restore this version. When I go back, voila, close the versions. And now I have my original workflow which is working, and I can test it out. Let's assume that you have made a mess of everything. It worked, by the way. If you click this button, tidy up, it will tidy up everything. And that's what that button is for. With tidying up, we are going to save this workflow, and this is the end of this chapter. I hope you like it. Thank you.